Arun Mishra, Head Global Health and Wellness Regulatory Affairs at Hindustan Unilever Limited. Mr. Arun Mishra will be moderator of the session and will take care of the proceeding during the session. All the stakeholders from senior government officials and experts from the domain and ladies and gentlemen. This is the third webinar on consumer health and wellness, exploring health benefits of micronutrients and nutritional products. Before we proceed toward the beginning of the formal session, very quickly, let me apprise you briefly about FICCI engagement in the area of nutrition. At FICCI, we are putting best of our efforts not only to drive the agenda of nutrition in the country, but also creating awareness among stakeholders on the different key aspects of nutrition. Considering the importance of nutrition, FICCI set up an exclusive Center for Food Nutrition Excellence last year with a vision to strengthen food nutrition ecosystem in the country and to work closely with stakeholders to enable and promote culture of safe and nutritious food. I would like to apprise you that one of the key subsector on which we are working very thoroughly and closely with our members is food ingredients. And I hope you all will agree that this sector is the most critical and important aspect responsible for building desirable ecosystem in the country. And I must say, the genesis of our Future of Nutrition webinar series is the result of our close engagement with the food ingredient sector and the working group which we have created some time back. At the outset, let me also thank all my partners who came together and supported FICCI in organizing this much important webinar series. Coming back to the today's session, we all are aware that importance of nutrition and diet in our lives. However, the current pandemic situation which we are witnessing has strongly reinforced this fact, and we all seem to have become a little more conscious about our health and nutrition aspects. Recognizing the importance of micronutrients and nutraceutical products towards consumer health and wellness, today's session will focus on exploring the avenues of micronutrients and nutraceuticals towards consumer health and wellness. Building this contest, I would now request Mr. Arun Mishra to take the panel discussion forward. Arun sir, over to you. I think we. Okay, so yeah, I think Arun sir dropped out. Priyanka, can you run the slide?
Yes, sir.
I think he's still not back. Go to the next. Okay, to start with, let me introduce you to all Mr. Tarun Bridge. He is the country director for nutrition, and I think everyone who is working in the food nutrition ecosystem know Mr. Tarun very well, and the critical role played by again being a development partner, not only with the government of India and working very closely with FSSAI. He has led PATH Global Health Portfolio in India with project team executing projects on the vaccines and immunization, maternal and newborn health and nutrition, tuberculosis, and other. Uh, I think Mr. Mishra has joined in. Sir, would like to take it forward from here? I just started.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. I request you to now take up the moderation part and carry on the session, sir.
Thank you very much, Abhinav, and I'm really sorry, guys, for the tech issues last minute. As always, we tried and tested yesterday, was fine. But today, again, is Murphy's Rule. So bear with me. But I'm so happy to be here with all of my friends I could see on the screen, Bhavna, Nikhil, Tarun, and Dr. I think she has joined as well, Dr. Madan as well, right? With that, it's a very important topic that we are going to discuss. Let me introduce very briefly with our panel members. In fact, they don't need any introduction, but let me at least attempt to give a sort of brief introduction, and then we will head into the discussion. So let me start with Dr. Madan. Dr. Madan, again, doesn't require any introduction, and everyone knows her, but she's an eminent nutritionist. She's also national president of Indian Diabetic Association, and she's principal and professor at Department of Food Nutrition and Dietetics at Sir Vittal Das Thakere's College of Home Science, which is part of SNDT Women's University in Mumbai. Again, I could go on. But again, welcome, Dr. Madan, for the session. Let me introduce my second panel member, Mr. Tarun Vij. I know him for a long time. He's a dear friend. He joined GAIN as a country director in 2015, and he has huge amount of experience in public health space and has driven and led many mega assignment at regional and global level. So again, good to have Tarun with us in this discussion. Let me come back to you, Bhavna. Again, Bhavna doesn't require any introduction. She heads the nutrition science at ITC. I had pleasure working with her. She's one of the best nutritionist scientists and industrial mindset R&D expert I have seen in the country. And she has very illustrative career profile and education profile. So I'm glad to have Bhavna again with us in this discussion. Last but not least, I would like to invite Nikhil on the panel as well. Very interesting profile Nikhil has. He's a dentist, but he's now business leader as well. And we will understand tremendously in terms of nutrition, micronutrients, and role, and how we are progressing in the country. So again, welcome to all panel members on this important discussion. Let me start with so the way we thought we may construct this panel in sort of 3 or 4 parts. One, we could perhaps look at role of micronutrients from health and public health point of view and why it is relevant from science point of view, from physiology point of view, and then we could look at public health impact of it, and we could look at recent ICMR RDA that came through. What does it mean? Why it is relevant for us? Again, from nutrition and public health point of view, and then we could look at more in terms of policy level from public health point of view in this crisis, how other sort of angles are emerging, and then we could look at what does it mean from businesses, science, claim point of view, and then we could also look at again from macronutrients, protein point of view, that how does it look, especially considering the crisis, and why it is more relevant now today to talk about. And then we could look at some regulatory challenges and hurdles that we have. So that's sort of construct we have. Our panel members will talk about in these buckets, so to say, and towards end we will take up your Q&A. So please post your questions, and then we will take up those questions to the panel members. I will not take much time, but just to start with and put the context around this, that micronutrient, of course, we all know is why it is important and relevant for function of our body. It is an issue, it is a challenge in the country, micronutrient deficiency, and I don't have to really talk much about it. We all are aware of whether it's a stunting, wasting, or the recent government reports that come out and highlights the relevance and importance of micronutrient deficiency and therefore challenges that we face. And therefore, let me invite our first panel member, Dr. Madan, to share her views, how she looks at it, that why micronutrients are relevant and important, and more so in these COVID days. Dr. Madan, I hope you are with us and you will be able to share your thoughts.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good morning to everyone. At the outset, I bring greetings to you from the Indian Dietetic Association, one of the largest association of food, nutrition, and dietetics professionals, with 20,000 life members across 25 chapters pan-India. I also bring greetings to you from my institution, which is one of the premier institution of India, Sir Vithal Das Thackeray College of Home Science. Thank you, Abhinav, and thank you, Priyanka, for making me a part of this discussion. And thank you, Mr. Arun, for those kind words. Let me set the context of this panel discussion. We all know it's nothing new for me to say that India has a triple burden of malnutrition. And, whether you look at gross undernutrition or overnutrition or obesity, one constant thread which runs across the spectrum is the hidden hunger, what we call as the micronutrient malnutrition. Friends, worrying about micronutrients has not appeared in the present context, but it has become more pertinent and apparent in the present context because today we are looking at the relevance of these micronutrients at the cellular level. How they work at the cellular level, the molecular nutrition has come in forefront, and that's where we're connecting these specific nutrients, whether we are talking in terms of their role in strengthening the immune system, because we know that all these cellular metabolic reactions are so very pertinent for strengthening the immune system. Now, say for example, we're talking today in terms of the pandemic, the COVID-19, and of course we were all unprepared, and even the nutrition scientists got caught unaware because there isn't any literature related to nutrients specifically in relation to the virus. But there is some literature which is emerging now, the connect of this virus to the ACE2 receptors at the cellular level, the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor at the cellular level, and which are the nutrients which can inhibit this connect of the virus at the cellular level. So why I'm elaborating on this is that the interest and importance on micronutrient emerges from this science which is getting generated, and that's where we want to understand which are those important nutrients which we really need to emphasize and use it to our advantage to not only strengthen the immune system but also deal with the kind of pandemic situation which we are in today. So a second aspect is that I think a lot of these nutrients, and especially micronutrients, which are getting emphasized, are also potent antioxidants, and they actually contribute to the anti-inflammatory environment. And let me, friends, share this stark truth with all of you is that in India, you may be a normal BMI, you may be a low BMI, but if we look at a body composition, we are carrying inherently high amount of fat, so which we coin today as a lean obesity. And to my mind, the starting point of inflammation is excess adipose tissue in the body. So if we are looking at the science of nutrition, which is going to help us decrease this level of inflammation in the body, I think that is where micronutrients become very important. The recent RDIs, which have been released, I think it's an excellent document, and it has looked at the need of looking at nutrients at different levels. So from a gross macro level, it has got very clear, precise presentation at the level of the individual requirement. So the estimated average requirement at the individual level. Then it goes to the population level, and that is your RDA. And it also goes further to explain the tolerable upper limit. So I think the way it has been presented brings the benefit to all stakeholders, whether it is a nutritionist who's planning a diet for an individual person, to a food industry professional who's looking at using that micronutrient for the advantage of the consumer, and also the tolerable upper limit to be to make us guarded, to the extent to which we can emphasize these micronutrients. When we look at this RDI, I think there is address to macro and micronutrient, but because the context of this discussion is micronutrient, so I just like to emphasize that there are 2 to 3 nutrients which have been very much highlighted in this, especially in this pandemic times. One is vitamin C, and because of the ACE2 inhibiting effect, the anti-inflammatory effect, the antioxidant effect, we know the science behind it. But what I want to connect this thread with RDI is that if I look at the document of RDI, the vitamin C requirements are increased. So, and also, vitamin C intake is being emphasized not only per se in the purview of vitamin C, but the benefit which it gives even in the bioavailability of other nutrients. The second is vitamin D. I think vitamin D again has been emphasized a lot, more so in COVID-19, because we all know that vitamin D is helping in strengthening the immune system, specifically to COVID-19. And when I look at this document again, there is emphasis on vitamin D. Then is zinc, of course. Zinc requirements, though they are very, very minimal. I mean, because it's a micronutrient, but it is one nutrient which can, work at the subcellular level and can have a very high impact, whether it is a recovery from the infection or, just the working of the immune system. In addition to that, I think there is a talk about omega-3 in a big way, vitamin E, vitamin A. And what heartens me very much is that some of the nutrients which were not there, cited in the last RDA, we have the levels indicated for magnesium, and we have selenium, copper. Some of these things which were not indicated in the last document are also there. So the point which I want to drive here is that if we are going to use our micronutrients for our health and wellness, I think we need to understand them, one, at the level of food. So I'm a nutritionist and I vouch for food-based approach. So my take always has been that we as individuals need to strengthen the dietary base first. There is no two way about it. That needs to be strengthened, beyond which we look at the nutraceuticals or the supplements which come in to help us. And we need to place ourselves as to where we are. Are we at the preventive level? Are we at the recovery level? Or are we at the active stage of the disease? I think so this context needs to be set, and people at large need to be given very precise and simple messages that sometimes people may forget about the dietary base and overemphasize on nutraceuticals or supplements. That's also not the way to address the issue. I think it has to be a very balanced approach of where to begin and where to do the add-ons based on the requirements. So I think these would be my initial thoughts, and I'll be happy to take the conversation forward.
Thank you, Dr. Madan. Very useful and very insightful as well. And I completely agree that we need to look at and have a holistic approach of health and wellness both. Dietary supplements or supplementation alone cannot really help in a holistic manner. So I completely agree with you. And I'm happy that you share triple burden. And what a thought triggered in my mind, and I would like to hear and panel's view maybe towards end in Q&A and discussion. Maybe there is a fourth burden. So we looked at obesity, we looked at malnutrition, we looked at hidden hunger, which is mostly talked about wasting and stunting in this country. This pandemic and the relation with micronutrients perhaps is establishing the fourth burden as susceptibility of infection and diseases, which has at large public health impact as well, economically and for population. And maybe that's the fourth coin in this conference we are terming, and the fourth burden we are sort of identifying in this forum. Perhaps worth talking at towards end. But thank you again for your thoughts. Let me invite my second panel member, Mr. Tarun Vij. And Tarun, what's your view when you look at more from public health point of view, implementation point of view, and policy point of view? How do you see this? And especially in this emerging crisis that we have, how do you see this is translating and either progressing the issue or the crisis or helping going forward? So your thoughts would be very valuable for the panel.
Thank you, Arun. And I also want to endorse exactly what Dr. Madan just said, that a diversified diet should be the starting point when we want to look at long-term nutritional security at the individual level and at the population level. And completely agree that in the time of COVID, we need to have a special focus on ensuring that nutritional deficits, wherever they are in our population, do not exacerbate as a consequence. We all know that nutrition usually affects the severity of the viral infection. We know from previous epidemics, seasonal and common illnesses, that people who are undernourished are much more likely to die from infectious diseases, including pneumonia. Coming to the current context globally and in India as a consequence of COVID, we are seeing widespread socio-economic and including health shocks across the globe and very much in our country. Looking at it from four dimensions, I would say first, there has been severe disruption of income, particularly income of the most bottom of the pyramid daily wage earners, and that disruption in income impacts their consumption of balanced nutritional diet, the affordability factor, and therefore the reliance on more staple foods to make up the diet sort of increases. Second, the food supply chains are also disrupted, and disruption in food supply chains impacts safe and nutritious foods more because these tend to be more perishable. Third, our interrupted and overburdened health systems and humanitarian responses get undermined in terms of delivery and access of health and nutrition services for the population. Lastly, in our social protection programs as well, these are severely overburdened as a consequence of COVID. More people need them now, and more is needed. So in this entire dimension, we have to plan our strategy as a country and globally as well as to how we have to conduct health and nutrition services for the population, particularly marginalized populations, at this juncture and time. Rough estimates indicate that for every percentage point drop in global GDP, another 700,000 stunted children, increase. And the negative impact of nutrition will be most amongst those who are at highest risk, and even short and medium term nutrition deficits can have long lasting effects. So I just want to conclude my remarks for now and then move forward later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Arun, for sharing your views. I agree, and I think that's how the crisis is sort of evolving or unfolding at the moment as well, especially when you look at the income disruption and then long-term impact, because not necessarily that has come back to the normal yet. So let's take that discussion again in Q&A towards the end, but thank you for sharing again your thoughts. Let me invite my third panel member, Bhavna, to really talk about more from business, industry, or company's perspective in terms of how do you look at this revised focus on micronutrients? I mean, it was always there because of the triple burden, but I guess the crisis has really brought this topic again in the center, and perhaps we are looking at the fourth burden as susceptibility. How do you see company's point of view when you look at the products, when you look at the claims, when you look at the science behind, and how do you look at some of its regulatory evolving framework recently introduced, whether it's a claim regulation or a future, the number of regulations which are coming to mature the Indian nutraceutical sector. So Bhavna, Anna, welcome and happy to hear your views.
Thanks, Arun. First of all, I wanted to wish all my, members here, part of the FICCI world, as well as all the people who are listening to us, a day in advance, a very happy World Food Day, which is tomorrow. I think I also want to thank FICCI, Priyanka, Abhinav for this opportunity, and Arun for the very, very kind words that you shared in the beginning. I think while I was also listening to Dr. Madan and Arun, I think some great points, and I think you also started it, setting the foundation for us very well to discuss. I think for me, when I look at this whole thing, and I would try to probably do a bit of a bridging between the public health, the nutrition, and the way industry works, is that end of the day, where I come from as a community on nutrition and science, I come from the world of whole food. So now, food essentially has multi-purpose to play, right? And if we actually start looking at in a platform, it does not exhibit only one function. Food essentially, when I say, and I'm not talking about nutrients per se right now, I'm talking about food. Food brings joy, happiness, and it is part of our daily balanced diet. And the principles that we apply for, as Dr. Madan was saying initially, are the principles of moderation, the balance, the variety, so that naturally and seamlessly we are able to meet our nutritional targets. We are able to prevent or delay onset of certain, non-communicable diseases. We are able to lead a happy and a healthy life. That's the primary function of food. And I think there has been a major shift in the intake patterns. And I think because of this year that the whole world is facing because of the pandemic has really changed everything that we probably knew about. And I think thanks for bringing in that fourth element of susceptibility and infections, because that is going hand in hand with the already existing issues that we had regarding the hidden hunger, the malnutrition, the over and the under part of it as well. The second function that always comes is the whole specific functionality, and that's when we start talking at a granular level of nutrients. So that's when we start focusing on individual nutrients. What is their role? What is their function? What do they do? Are we meeting them in terms of a requirement, or we are not able to meet them? And I think today we are at a very good stage in India. We have very good quality data available to us, whether it is from the NNMB data sets that we have for tribal, we have for rural, we have for urban. We have the CNNS data, which is also covering the kids from up till 18 or 19 years of age. We have all sorts of data available to us. We also have the new IFCT, which is giving you the value of raw foods per 100 gram for possible every single nutrient. And we now also have the new RDAs, which has incorporated many, many good things. And I think Dr. Madan touched base on some of them, which was talking about how we have amalgamated vitamin A under one header. We have now vitamin D available to us as our own RDAs and other things, which we can now, leverage further ahead. And that's when we talk about the whole part of, okay, if in a population level, like just to take example of one of them, vitamin A, very important. And I think it's become further more important because of the COVID situation that we have, where it is now estimated that almost 150 million kids would be now at a very underprivileged situation. I think we've always talked about India in the perspective of, having the India enigma, where despite all the public policies, we are still, probably 10 to 20% behind every single milestone where we should have been, or we could have been, given the scale of interventions that is happening, both from industry, from public, from the government, and all those sides. Keeping those in mind, I think the topics of this whole fortifications, enrichment, and biofortification, all these things are coming up. And if I start looking at it today, if I was just looking at the NNMB urban data sets for vitamin A, at a household level, we are only able to meet the requirement of 22% of the entire intake that should have happened, but we're not able to reach that. And I think if you marry the 2 points, vitamin A is very, very important at a public health perspective. We know it. It is a very important vitamin for preventing night blindness at a community level. It plays a very critical role in maintaining a normal health, the functioning of a normal, healthy immune system for its functions. And hence, going ahead, the discussion on the whole fortification of edible oil, milk with vitamin A, so that we can marry the 2-3 points of, what is deficient at the population at the individual levels, what is easily affordable and accessible, and it can be done by all, and what are the vehicles which are available for it to do, and what is the health impact that's going to have to it. The other sector which started to build along with it, and I think we've seen massive science discoveries and discussions which are happening from science and regulatory perspective, is this whole segment of specialized foods. So from a regulatory perspective, we always talk about them in the perspective of FSDUs and FSMPs. From another perspective, we look at them either as functional foods. We look at the foods for, actually at a curative angles, nutraceuticals, and a borderline of pharmaceutical, which also have some advent of a bioactive compound, if not the entire food, of course. The other interesting thing that has also happened in the last, I think, 12 months, it has been part of our culture for a very long time. But the other thing that has happened is the whole coming back of not only the ancient grains that we've been talking, but the whole Ayurveda system, where a big amount of data is now being developed about their efficacies, their bioactive molecules. So I think when you look at this spectrum, it is not very easy to pick up one or two things to say, this is the way to go ahead and this is the only way we need to focus. Because if you look at it, at different levels of spectrum, there are different things to be done. And we have to be very careful about which 2 or 3 dots we are connecting for which particular outcome. So when we look at community level, the fortification of the staples is something which has been thought through as a plan. And I think it is one of the affordable ways. It has to be done the right way for the right audience in the right vehicle. When we talk about fortification of the foods, which are probably not the staples, but the foods which are there and can add value because of the certain micronutrients, you're not able to have them organically. Like, I'll be very honest, if I ask in my own family about my own family members, do you think, are you anemic? I don't think anybody would raise their hand or would even be aware of it, despite knowing how important iron is for all of us. Or even for that matter, vitamin A. Are we deficient? Are we not deficient? We don't get to know, which has also to do with the skewed food choices or the meal planning choices that we're doing. But end of the day, they need to be put back into it. So when fortification is done for a particular food, yes, it is done by the regulatory requirements of the minimum and the maximum, but we also have to be very careful about the fact that, there is a certain amount of limits which are given when you talk about fortification staples, when we talk about the example of vitamin A. But if I go ahead and make a claim on immunity benefits, we have to be careful about what are the exact target group we're talking, what is the science available, what is the claim that is being made? Is it an under or over representation of those same things? So there are multitude of things which have to be looked at. And I think I just briefly touched upon something like Ayurveda. We are all seeing the advent of Ayurveda. We all have been using it in our kitchens for a very, very long time. But today, the kind of science that is emerging about, whether it's eugenol, whether it is, the curcumin, all those things which are going to be connected back to the scientific rigor that we put, whether through scientific clinical trials, they have to be done in the right spirit, with the right format, the right vehicle for the right outcome with the right teaching. Because without connecting those dots, this whole benefit of, the food, the nutrient, the vehicle will not be passed on to the end consumer. Because end of the day, the way I look at it is that all of us are working for that one child, that one mother, that one family. And we all have a shared responsibility of delivering the right benefit in the right format with the right science or the technical support that is required, so that not only at an individual level, but at the population level, the country level, we are able to do some meaningful, bring a meaningful difference to their lives and an overall health status for it. So yes, it's a complex world. It's a complex issue, but I think the way we are, growing in this field, I think it hopefully should get a better seamless journey for all of us from here. So that's my thoughts on this one, Arun.
Thank you, Bhavna. Very helpful and very to the point as well. So thank you very much for sharing. I agree. It's a complex subject, and also maybe it's the right time to really unpick the complex subject and see what are the areas that we really need to focus and how do we make it less complex. So I agree with you. Thank you for sharing. Let me invite my last panel member to share his views in terms of how does he see, again, industry leader and by qualification dentist as well, so comes with solid medical science background. How do you see this? What's your perspective on this if you look at Dr. Nikhil?
Sure. Thank you, Arun. I think good morning to all of you, and thank you, Vicky, very much for inviting me on this forum. Now, with the previous experts, we have heard about the micronutrients very much and the focus and why it's required. How will it really impact the health? I would like to focus and stress upon the macronutrient part of it. And when I think of the macronutrients, the most important element comes to my mind are the proteins. Okay. So now in India, protein has been a much under debated topic when it comes on the general discourse of food and nutrients. And various studies over time have shown that the share of protein in our diet has always been much on the lesser side. Now, if we see a typical Indian thali, the central portion majorly consist of rice or roti, which are the carbs, and they form 60 to 70% of the plate, and the rest are the fats and the proteins. So the proteins have a much lesser share in our Indian diet, and as far as the vegetarian Indian diet is concerned, it becomes even more lesser. Now, a survey done by IMRB in 2017 found that 70% urban population is protein deficient, and 93% were unaware of their daily protein requirements. Now, this protein deficiency leads to a loss or something called as anemia, as we call it. And this is also supported by a study of done by InBody in 2018, which illustrated that 71% of Indians have poor muscle health and 63% have lower than adequate levels. Now, most people associate protein as a nutrient for bodybuilders or the sick. However, we need to recognize that protein is a vital part of our system. It is a vital building block and is also required for normal body function. Even our system has the building blocks of protein only. So obviously, protein deficiency will lead to a weaker immune system and slower recovery from illness as well. Now, if we go to see the latest ICMR NIN guidelines, the recommended protein intake for an average adult is about zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per kg body weight per day. So, which is, for example, if you take a 65 kg adult, and roughly it is about 65 grams protein per which is really required for this individual, and which is almost equivalent to 10 eggs. Now, obviously, is it really possible to consume this amount of protein from our normal diets? And well, the answer would be majority of them wouldn't be able to suffice that. So, and that's where clinical nutrition comes into picture, where high biological value proteins like whey protein based supplements, etc., can be used for wellness as well. You know, so, and this pandemic has, caused so many changes in our daily diet patterns with increase in snacking and obviously with that more carbs and more fat-based foods. So, we are getting into this vicious cycle, which needs to be really addressed, which really needs to be broken at the, right time. Otherwise, the burden of, diabetes, metabolic syndrome and the likes and the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, everything is going to really, really increase. So it's high time that we address this need. That's my view, Arun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think it's an interesting view as well. So if you look at the recent report published by NIN, and the report is called "What India Eats." I think it was issued last week or in last couple of weeks. One of the findings which I thought was quite interesting was, and I'm going to read the verbatim from the report, portion of population consuming recommended level of good quality protein, and recommended level is more than 66% protein from pulses, legumes, nuts, milk, and foods. So level of good quality protein were only 5% among rural and 18% among urban people, which was alarming for me to read that. I mean, I was aware and I had looked at number of statistics and data and reports, as you suggested, 70% people are protein deficient. But for me, it was a bit sort of interesting data point to look at only 5% among rural. I mean, India still lives in villages, and you're looking at 5% of the population getting um, sort of recommended level of protein, and therefore then relating back to role of protein in health, muscles, bodybuilding, and so on, which is critical part of it. So thank you again for sharing your views. Um, I want to come back to Dr. Madan and seek her view on the initial discussion. And please, any other panel member, please chip in. That I agree, fully agree, that we need to have very diversified sort of food and healthy food habits and lifestyle as well. That's first, and that's not debatable. Um, but when you look at the challenges, as Tarun was saying or sharing, that food security is becoming an issue, or the income disruption is creating sort of food security crisis in majority of the population that we look at. And then if you look at NIN reports suggesting that only 5% population of rural India gets required protein. How do we look at it? What's your view on approach as a country we take, where we are able to provide balanced meal, of course, but then required micro and macronutrients. I mean, as you mentioned, and we are aware that even micro accessibility of micronutrients uh, via natural sources or via supplement still an issue in the country. It's not fully accessible yet. And if accessible, as Bhavna was saying, then science comes in with the bioavailability. I don't know how many kilos of spinach you have to eat to get the RDA of iron, for example. And then bioavailability becomes an issue. I don't know if there is any magic remedy or magic pill or magic formula, but I would be interested to hear your view in practicality. What potentially could be an approach for the country, considering the challenges that we may have? And thank you again in advance sharing your views, Dr. Madan. You are on mute, Dr. Madan. Sorry.
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Arun. I think you've touched on a very, very important aspect, which we really need to address. I completely take Dr. Nikhil's point that protein is a very, very important nutrient which needs to be addressed in an Indian scenario. And if you look at the recent RDI, I'm so heartened to see that we have gone beyond the cereal pulse combination which we were talking about, and they have built in the ratio of cereal pulse and milk products, right? So I feel the way to address this concern pan India or at the level of the whole country is that we need to prioritize what is our strength, and we need to start the conversation of protein from pulses, which is something so inherent to India. And the variety of pulses which are available to us as Indians, which are not only giving us proteins, but we are addressing micronutrients. If you look at the micronutrient composition of pulses, it is immense. All the important micronutrients are there, vitamins are there, soluble fiber is there. So first is prioritizing what is our strength and maximizing whatever we can get from there. When we talk cereals, I think again we are now reinventing the wheel, and we are wanting to emphasize on the nutri cereals and not just wheat and rice, which we've been talking about for so many years. And combination of these two with the addition of milk and milk products in smaller quantities in totality would build the quantity and the quality of the protein, because what we say is that even if your quantity is small, but if you get the quality, the bioavailability, the ability of the body to utilize that protein gets higher. I'll give you one example. I was also the mission leader to evaluate the midday meal program in the state of Maharashtra. Now, it is such a huge opportunity, wherein we are feeding so many lakhs and millions of children. But are we doing justice to it? Are we really maximizing on this opportunity? And today, I was so heartened to see the Telangana example, wherein an effort was made to look at the midday meal program. So, moving from just a rice-based meal, there is addition of good amount of pulse, cutting down on that rice, addition of good amount of pulse, giving an egg to a child every day, giving green leafy vegetables to a child, on a routine basis. So what I'm saying is that there is a solution to every problem if we have the will to do it, and B, if we also have the prudence to take stock of what is our strength. If we say green leafy vegetable, I think every part in India has so many unfamiliar. I mean, we may restrict our knowledge to just fenugreek and spinach. But if you look at IFCT, the food composition table 2017, it gives you the detailing of familiar and non-familiar food. So I think it's high time Indians need to look at the non-familiar foods which are there around, use them because they are local, they're seasonal, they're economical. Take the professionals or the stakeholders together and become intelligent in terms of maximizing, in terms of what is easily available to us, economically available to us, and again, use the nutrition knowledge to combine it in such a manner so that we maximize on the important nutrients and also their bioavailability. So I think this is something which is very, very important, which I would like to share.
Thank you, Dr. Madan. Thank you very much. And rightly said, prioritize and maximize what we have. I think that's the mantra we need to look at. Not necessarily we may have utilized all the toolkits, so to say, we may have in our country to address some of the challenges. So thank you for sharing your views again on that. I want to come back to Bhavna and really pick her brain around to understand the other area which is emerging in health and wellness we are looking at is whole Ayurveda. And again, you touched upon briefly, but there is lines are blurring. If you look at between Ayurveda, nutraceuticals, borderline sort of drug nutrition combination you talked about. How do you see Ayurveda evolving from science point of view, considering the crisis and how Ayurveda has become center of the plate at the moment of discussion, when even our Prime Minister talked about Ayush Authority and the recommendation. How do you see that evolving, especially when it is so deeply rooted in our traditions for thousands of years, and it is in the textbooks what we can do and what we can't do. How do you see that evolving? And if I dare to say, modernizing Ayurveda and bringing some of the tools of modern sciences to evolve that further. Any thoughts around that, Bhavna, from you?
Yeah, thanks, Arun. I think at the outset, it would be safe to share that my experience with Ayurveda actually started, I think, of course, from the childhood in our own kitchens, our mothers using it in various formats. I think we all have been exposed to Ayurveda in different formats, either as supplements which are present or in our every single food, from spices to additional things. I think in the last few months, where I was also just looking at the consumer trends which were coming in, and there was a very interesting data that came. So if you look at the spikes, and I'm talking about the last 6 months specifically, and I was trying to compare the two trend spikes which were coming data as amalgamation from Intel's and reports, and you see that if there is an immunity trend, there is a vitamin C trend, and there are micronutrient trends, they generally go up and down and they live at a certain point. Ayurveda, interestingly, and I was not aware of it, in fact, Ayurveda has always been top of mind for all Indians. So there is a significant amount of a trend gap between the two, and Ayurveda actually leads it because of the fact that we are also familiar with it. It's part of it. We don't really, question it per se much because, it's used in our families and everything like that. However, of course, because of the COVID, and I think the truth is that, without the presence of any kind of a medicine or an effective vaccines that we don't have right now, people were, looking at all kinds of, safe solutions which are present, whether through the modern science or through the ancient, knowledge available in their own homes. And I think that's where the whole Ayurveda has also made a huge, huge comeback, if you notice. And of course, there are the whole specifics, 2-3 of them, which are leading the whole conversation, which is coming from pepper, ashwagandhas, turmeric, giloy, all those things are coming up. Now, the interesting part to see are two. For somebody like me, and I'll be very honest with the group, for somebody like me, if I want to, understand this science part of it, and also to evaluate the opportunity to say that, what, probably it's the right thing to do, like also Dr. Madan was saying, it's pretty much the extension of that. We don't have to always run behind a spinach if it's expensive or seasonal, not available. There are enough and many green leaves which are available. People in different geographies may not be aware of them, and I think which is also true for pretty much something like a millet. There's a different kind of a millet available in north and a different kind available in south. It doesn't mean that if it's not omnipresent and everybody knows about it, it's not good. We'd have to definitely get more regional, and I think that's the same truth which comes for even Ayurvedic extracts. Now, if I want to take that and join the two parts, that there is definitely a good amount of science and traditional knowledge, and I want to put it out in a product, what exactly I do with it, does it actually have an impact or not, and which lens should I use that it's the right thing to do to give it out to the people who believe in this. So now I think we have the entire Ayush ministry, which has very credibly laid down principles about it. I think what I heard from one of the Ayurvedic experts in my recent conversation with them is that they said that, Ayurvedic is not a magic cure. It's like a lifestyle. It's a life that you live with a certain principles. And it includes, every single Ayurvedic herb or spice that you pick up has to be used at a certain point in time in the day, during the day. It has to be used in the right format. So whether it's the leaf, whether it's the root, whether it's an extract, whether you have to boil it and have it, whether you have to have it dry, what kind of properties it's going to have. Should you have it empty stomach, or should you not have milk or something like that with it? When you read through it, it's a very different kind of a mechanism that exists. Now, of course, the second part of it is also true that, now if you notice some of them, and we take, their knowledge for making products under two zones. Standard Ayurvedic formulations, and there are Ayurvedic proprietary medicines which are also available. And I think we do have references points like the Pharmacopoeia India or the Charak Samhita, and we have reference standpoints which gives us all these guidances. And we do have the proposition of going the right traditional knowledge, the right claims that can be made with it, and the right format in which it can be used. So this is one world. The other world, which has also started to emerge in the last few months, specifically when we've heard a lot of, Ayurvedic products or extracts, which are probably also, good as anti-inflammatory, antiviral, having impacts, and, or just naturally enhancing the innate immunity systems. Now, the thing in that is that when we try to do, we have to be very careful because that is where we can't neglect the regulatory aspect of it. It is very important. Nutrition, science, and regulatory go hand in hand, especially when you are, making a product which is going to be sold directly from the counter or through prescriptions or anything like that, depending on the formats we were talking. In that, we also have to somewhere go back and check that whether this product is going to completely abide through the Ayurvedic route, which we were just talking about as standard or proprietary, or whether it starts to come in build as normal FSSAI product, which has certain functional bioactives, which are coming from these Ayurvedic herbs or spices in whatever format that is compatible from the sensory, from the process perspective of it, without doing any compromise on the quality of the product and the kind of science rigor that needs to go. And, at least in the kind of, work I was focusing on 3-4 of them, we still have to develop certain kind of a scientific documentations, which are okay by the modern science principles that we apply for all our vitamins and minerals, which are used as, either as fortificants or in additions of enrichment processes. And that is the bit we need to do. And I think I don't have the answer, but I've been, also trying to find an answer to say that what exactly is the best way to actually incorporate Ayurveda. And I think fundamentally the traditional wisdom says that we should follow the first rule that we were talking about. But due to any challenge, whether it's because of sensory, whether it's because of the cost, whether it's non-availability of it, should they be converted into the right format, consumed like that? We also have to measure out the toxicology, the upper limits and the toxic impacts of it, because a lot of them have a very narrow upper limit of intakes, just the way we have it for vitamin and mineral. Now, this science has been explored, understood. We have a lot of data. This science of the traditional wisdom definitely has a lot of data on the traditional part of it under one. But in case it has to become to brought to the other side, where you are actually trying to do clinicals, and randomized control trials basis the new modern versions of the work. At what point, what is the measure? This is something which needs to be worked so that both the communities are happy and the consumers get the advantage in the end in the right way.
Thank you, Bhavna. Very, very useful again. I think it's coming back to the same. How do we prioritize? How do we maximize? Of course, we have this powerful tool, and how do we use it more? And we have seen that in this crisis, how we have expedited. We have gone and ventured into number of subjects and areas with the panel, from nutrition to public health to micronutrients to healthy plate, and so on, and public health point of view. Briefly, I would like to invite again Tarun. Really, after hearing that different parts of this conversation, how do you see, especially when you are looking at income disruption in a large population, how do you see from policy point of view sort of direction in your view that as a country we should look at to address longer term impact or risk of this crisis, and therefore any nutritional crisis we may have?
Thanks, Arun. I think I want to focus first on large-scale food fortification and the gains the country has made, particularly since 2016, in scaling up fortification of the 5 staples: wheat, rice, double fortified salt, milk, and cooking oil. I think in the current context and for future, we need to consolidate the gains that have been made in large-scale food fortification. 2 reasons: A, the cost factor, and B, the reach. And given that diets in times like this default more towards staples, it's a safety measure as well. Just to give you an example, fortified edible oil, fortified with vitamins A and D, is now reaching about 840 million people basis the tonnage. The tonnage being fortified in India currently is about 7.5 million metric tons out of a total household consumption, which is packaged edible oil, 15 liters or less packing, of about 10.5 million. So at about 25 grams per day per capita consumption, this roughly translates into 845 million reach. So I think both as a country, both an open market approach, which is partnering with private sector, more brands bringing out fortified staples, and on the other side, inclusion of fortified staples into our social protection schemes. Nicely so, in 2017, the government of India had directed states that in midday meal programs and in the ICDS programs, wherever hot cooked meals are provided, the fortified ingredients should be used. There are several states where there are very good examples of efficient execution at the last mile, but there are also states that are not performing as well. So I think in our country, you have excellence and need coexisting, and sharing of best practices between states also needs to happen. So I would make a strong case of made in large scale food fortification, also bringing in the dimension of biofortified products. And uh, just to share, particularly GAIN is working now in 6 states on zinc wheat, and on iron-rich pearl millet, bajra, and trying to find pathways to commercialize these, as also get them included in the social protection scheme. So, whereas safe, nutritious, healthy, diversified food should be our overall goal. But we must not lose any momentum on the gains made in fortification and now biofortification in the coming years. So these are my sort of inputs.
Thank you very much, Tarun. And thank you for sharing your views again. May I request all the panel members to put the camera on? So what I will do, I'll try to wrap and conclude sort of session a bit earlier than before. So may I request everyone to put their camera on, please? Very good. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you. First of all, so good to see so many friends on the screen, especially when everyone is logged in. It's always good to see friends and other family members as well. So hope you and all your family members are safe. Same goes with the participants as well. Hope they are safe and well. Let me summarize the discussion. A very enriched discussion. We went into multiple directions and talked about the role of micronutrients, why it is important from health point of view, why it is critical, more so critical now. We also perhaps identified the fourth dimension of the issue beyond overnutrition, malnutrition, and hidden hunger. Perhaps susceptibility is the fourth one that we are looking at as a burden. I think the areas which are like income disruption, which is fueling this further, the issue of nutrition and micronutrients as well. I think the answer is somewhere in between. In this complex matrix, answer is somewhere in between, and there is no one answer. It's like holistic approach of really, green, full, healthy meal, so to say, to start with. And then, of course, then there are areas like protein deficiency, micronutrient deficiency, and then, as Dr. Madan said, how do we prioritize and maximize and look at our hidden resources, like we are discovering Ayurveda, to really utilize those tools as well? How do we continue the momentum, as Tarun was saying, of mass fortification level of staple food, and therefore address those issues? How do we not lose what we have gained so far and continue that effort that we are making? I think the other area which I thought came out clearly is awareness. Not necessarily people are aware of the deficiencies, and it's not very apparent either. Therefore, I think there could be a potential opportunity for awareness as well, that what is micronutrient, what does it mean, what's the deficiency, how does it affect your health, long term, short term, and so on. Potentially, that's another area. I know FSI has done a lot of work in last few years, and they continue to do. I think that could potentially be another area to focus. I think the other one we briefly touched upon is the regulatory framework is evolving from a spectrum of food to functional food, to FSMP, to FSDU, to health supplement, and then going to drug level. So I think that framework is evolving, and perhaps there is a room to continue to sharpen that and evolve that to really support the industry and from public health point of view. I think the last one I wanted to summarize from our discussion, perhaps there is an opportunity for industry, academia, government, and public sector to come together and to really focus on affordable nutrition. that how do we look at affordable nutrition for the country, and every stakeholder has a role to play. As Tarun was saying, from mass fortification point of view, as Nikhil was saying, from protein point of view, as Bhavna, you were talking about, you were mentioning around Ayurveda and other functional food that we are looking at, or Dr. Madan was talking about micronutrients and role of healthy meal. How do we look at affordable nutrition, and how do we make nutrition more accessible to the country, and more so in this crisis? Potentially, I thought that was another sort of summary line of that discussion. With that, I really want to thank each and every panel member again for your valuable contribution. I would like to invite now Abhinav to close the session from here. But again, thank you very much. Stay safe, stay well, and good to see you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Arun. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arun Mishra. I think you sum up it so well, no one else could have done it. You made my job much simpler, and very briefly, very rightly, you put across the perspective of all the speakers. Since we are on the verge of closing down, I just received one or two questions. If you allow panel members, can I take this up? Okay. So I got one question from one of the respondents saying, what is the impact of essential micronutrients on acceptable sensory quality of food and beverage products while incorporating supplements to required levels? So any of the panel member would like to take this up?
Okay, I'll try to attempt it because probably it's about the whole F&B products in the end. That's how it takes it up. And I think I would request any of you, and including Arun, you as well. See, I think the way we look at it is that, yes, like I said in the beginning, like food has multiple functions to play in a person's life, right? From joy and nourishment to sustainability to growth to actually fulfill significant gaps which can impact the health outcomes, and then moving to a very very specific curative zone, and they all happen at individual levels, family levels, and population levels per se. So I don't think we have a like a exact cut to cut answer for certain queries like that, but like I said, I will try to do that. If I just have to have a very narrow view of, to look at it, I would say that yes, there are two things that we have to join together. One is we know that there is a certain deficiency or an enrichment needs to be done, or fortification needs to be done in the right vehicle. Now, the thing is, when you're doing that, your main intent is that the benefit reaches the customer or the consumer in the end, right? Now, in that, the most significant thing that comes in the middle is the format in which you actually do that. Now, if you want to do in a more acceptable, all TV accepted, you skew more towards the natural, the food, more commonly used, everyday use part of your diversified balanced diet formats. You enrich those. And I think that's where the staple fortification comes into the beam, because that's where the sensory impacts are probably the least, because the amount which is required, and the health impact, you look at a population level. That if you're going to have it every day, even if you're having less, it's going to be good for you. So that's how you manage the sensory part at that perspective. Now, if you're actually looking at a very significant gap to be fulfilled, at that point, the dosages have to be right, and they generally are very higher. Sometimes they are actually reaching up to 1 RDA, which is 100% of the RDAs. In that condition, it probably would be very difficult to deliver it in a normal, food format. Then you skew towards either as a functional food, and like we said, like Ayurvedic proprietary medicine, which can come in the format of either a suspension, it could be a gel, it could be a pill, sometimes it could be a more specific food to be utilized. And that's where the sensory benefit is a little lower, because you've communicated transparently, like, look, this is more from a prevention slash curative slash management part. And that's where you choose the right amounts and the right format. So depending on, what your end goal is, what are you fortifying with? And like I said, there is going to be a huge amount of difference between even a simple thing like a prebiotic or a probiotic versus a vitamin versus a mineral or an Ayurvedic bioactive compound. So all these things have to be, calculated first, and then you do an end impact on the stability, upper limits and the minimum limits, and then the sensory. So that's the process. So I hope you get some help from this.
Thank you, Bhavna.
It's very good
Can I add?
that.
Yeah, please go ahead,
Yeah,
Mr. Please.
yeah. So, since the question was on sensory as well, to add, while selecting the fortificants, you need to be choosing the right salts of the fortificants as well as the mineral especially or vitamin, and that will also affect the taste of the final product. So keeping the final product in mind, at what temperatures it goes to, if it's a bakery product or what, so all the things need to be considered, and what is the final outcome of that, and that needs to be correlated with the different salts as well, which will affect the
Thanks.
taste of the final product. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dr. Nikhil. In fact, my next question is to you itself. I think you can address it better. What are the major psychological limitations in cereals for micronutrients biofortification?
Okay. Can you come again, please?
Yeah. What are the major physiological limitations in cereals for micronutrients biofortification? Or I think even Tarun sir can also address this. Please,
Yeah,
you go ahead.
if you can take up that. Okay.
Tarun sir, would you like to take this up?
I didn't clearly get the question.
It says, what are the major physiological limitations in cereals for micronutrients biofortification?
I'm sorry, I will not be able to answer that technical question at all. I'm currently focused on commercializing it, and I know scientists a little bit more better informed than me might be able to give a more cogent answer.
Tarun sir, I have a question for you.
Can I just come in?
Yeah, Dr. Madan, please.
Please, Dr. Madan, do so.
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to look at is when we are biofortifying the cereals, it's of course a very new area. And I know one of my colleagues, Dr. Shobha Odipi, she's done some excellent work using biofortified cereals and feeding it to young children, and they've seen some very good results. The thing is that, the moment you start looking at it, applying it to masses, there is always a fear, in terms of how is it going to impact the physiological system in the long term, so I think that is what the person who's asked this question is, that what is going to be the physiological impact of using this kind of a biofortified cereal in population at large. I think it's too early for us to make any such statements, but I feel as we evolve as a science or as a fraternity, we have to take up these kind of steps which are beneficial, if not for the population at large, maybe it can be focused to certain target groups. And I always feel as a nutritionist or as a scientist that we must always start with guarded, like we should start small, we should start with target groups, do some kind of studies to see the physiological impact, maybe follow it up for a certain time to see the long term effect, because these are newer areas wherein for any consumer to accept this on the label and use it with a confidence, I think we will need to generate that kind of literature and support. So I think these would be my comments.
Thanks, Dr. Madan, for taking this up. My next question is Mr. Tarun Vij. Sir, what are your views on the government schemes for fortification of food supplied through PDS?
I think it's already happening in different states. And I see that as a very, very positive move. Once you introduce fortified, example, let me give you the example of Himachal. Himachal has introduced fortified wheat flour in the public distribution system. Now, what then tends to happen at the district level, in the schools, in the Anganwadis, there is immediate availability and access. And so, if you want to transfer the benefit evenly across the population, PDS is the best way to do it. It's happening more effectively, I've seen, in the smaller states. Having said that, we're a country where we celebrate our diversity in all shapes and forms, and I think there is enough scope for us to transfer best practices from some of the successful examples. Kerala is another one. Andaman is a third one. Tripura is doing great work. So there are examples, and I think it would be appropriate that different state governments take measures to scale it up.
Uh, uh, Abhinav, can I add to what Mr. Tarun said?
Yes, Dr. Madan, please go ahead.
So I think, Mr. Tarun, I have one thought to add to this is that, when we are fortifying cereals and giving it through PDS, one message which should also go is that fortifying a food does not mean that we overdo on that food. So on one side, we are looking at micronutrient malnutrition. On the other side, we are also looking at our plate, where we are finding that protein-rich food or the fiber-rich foods or the local vegetables are vanishing. And what is getting emphasized is only the cereal. So we may fortify the cereal, we may give it at a low cost to people at large, but somewhere I think in the policy, we should also think that along with this, we need to make available, the dietary diversity which we are talking about. That message also should go to people at large. See, today we have such huge percentage of pre-diabetes and diabetes. The major reason why this is, and this cuts across socioeconomic strata. It's not that diabetes is only a problem of the higher socioeconomic strata. It cuts across socioeconomic strata. Why? Because we have not been in a position to teach people that in your plate, there is only a quantity of rice or a millet which you need. You also need your local pulse. You also need your vegetable. So if through PDS, we are giving something subsidized, the message, maybe, we can think that we also give pulses. We support it with nutrition education or something like that. What I'm trying to say is we should not look at fortification in isolation as a solution. Because when we fortify something, we tell the governments, take it through PDS, the message goes across is this is fortified, easily available, less price, overdo it. So this is what we don't want. What we want is that people should know that this is, if cereal is fortified, it still needs to be used in, a defined quantity. And with that, we need to get the protein, we need to get the protective food. So I somehow feel as a nutritionist, this is a very important aspect which we need to deliberate. How do we do it?
Completely agree, Dr. Madan. I think you hit the nail on the head that fortification is not a silver bullet at all. It can at best be a complementary strategy, and it can only provide just the basic 25 to 30% RDA. It is not going to be able to replace what we need in our diet is, diversified, food, and fortification cannot replace, the benefits of a diversified diet. And that needs to be emphasized at every level. And as I think was mentioned even earlier, how can we look at the composition of the ICDS foods? Can we look at better formulations using local and seasonal ingredients? Can we improve upon the plate that we provide in the midday meals? Is there better scope? Can we add some more money there to make it a little bit more holistic and etc.? I think we need to do all of the above, and fortification can only be one of the things. Absolutely, completely agree.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madan and Arun, clearly stating what the needs are. I think the key lies on creating more about one. So I think there needs to be more focus, and I think we can work together with the government. I think most of you are already working with many government, state governments. But if you suggest, we can work upon it later, and jointly we can put across a message to the wider masses. I got another question coming from one of the participants saying, how about the superfood like moringa leaf or its powder, which is high in nutrition? I'm sure moringa has now become a kind of superfood and is getting exported also from India, and globally there is a surge in demand. So any of you, Dr. Madan or Dr. Bhavna or Tarun sir, any one of you would like to focus on what about moringa? I guess we have more such products in the country, but moringa of late has picked up now. Please, ma'am, Dr. Madan.
Bhavna, would you like to take it?
Yeah.
Well, ma'am, I think you, would probably know the most
Okay.
on this amongst us. I think I'll just maybe just start a bit, and then I would come in. So I think, like I said, I think the word superfoods, there is no definition of it. That's the fundamental truth. It probably is more like it's definitely a more scientific way to look at something. I think the way I look at superfoods is like it's an opportunity to evaluate a certain product or an ingredient or an active for its right usage in the right amounts. Because I think one thing that you just said in previous, which is related to staples, is also applicable to superfoods. Because what happens is that sometimes there is science, may not be of the highest quality that we generally do, because these change every year. There is a jackfruit powder, there is a moringa, there is quinoa, there is millets. They change every year, right? And they have no boundaries. They're not limited to India or America. They're not limited to Ayurveda or modern. I mean, they're just open, right? So I think the only thing that comes in mind for me are 2 points. Is one that before actually, from a science and community that we belong, all of us, is that we need to do the analysis from a more sincere, thorough, scientific research of that. We need to understand how much, because I think one of the biggest issue that comes with anything which is a superfood perspective is that nobody thinks about them, that are they part of super diet. End of the day, I think we all talk about a diversified, balanced diet. So I think I'm more comfortable about including a certain, powerful or like a known food or an ingredient or a bioactive being part of a super diet. And I think, yes, moringa, all of them we talk about, or a fenugreek, or a quinoa, or a jackfruit thing, they all are in their own measures good. What is important to know before we start completely buying them off, and sometimes we end up buying really expensive things, and we don't know how to use and how much to use and when to stop using them sometimes, is I think a more critical factor for us as and I'm speaking as a consumer as well, because I am no I also get, I read up and I get excited that I should buy this for my family, and I think it's going to work like a miracle
Yeah.
family, and I'll be amazing. So that's my thought, ma'am. Please add to that.
I completely support what you said, Bhavna. I also strongly feel that there is no magical food, there is no superfood. Okay, and you have to learn to strike a balance. And sometimes what happens is some of these foods get a celebrity status. Prime Minister Modi in Mann Ki Baat stating that I look forward to my moringa leaves thepla. So moringa gets that kind of pedestal. Yes, moringa leaves are nutritious. Look at the vitamin C. You look at the micronutrients which are there, and seasonally if they are available, we must definitely include it. But it's something like, see, I think we need to understand that what we communicate to people and how they use it, they're two different things. I remember, one of my videos was taken up by the government in the Arogya Setu app. And, we had written at the end of it that if you have any queries, you write to idnationalpresident@gmail, and I would revert to you. And believe me, I reverted to all the queries I got. And one fine day, I got a call from somebody, and he said that, Madam, मैं सारा दिन काढ़ा पी रहा हूँ. Kitna pina means, what I'm trying to say is, if we are talking about Ayurveda, if you're talking about Kada, now that lay person who is listening to you or who's reading things on the social media takes it at the face value and starts overdoing it. So then I had to tell him, I said, sir, आपको खाली काढ़ा नहीं पीना है, आप क्या पूरे दिन में खा रहे हैं वो भी जरूरी है आपको देखना. So you need to have the total perspective in place. So I think when we put out messages in social media or on platforms where lay people read this information, we need to give them a perspective that this food may have these values, but how do you place it in your matrix? You also need to learn. So it's something like that, I mean, a moringa powder or a moringa pill cannot become a magical food. It still needs a place in your plate as to what is your total intake per, in the whole day. How are you balancing your macro and micronutrients, and where are you fitting this moringa over there? So I think that's the language we need to talk to people. And whenever, as professionals, I think we talk on social media or on platforms where people are listening to us, we must give these important messages that don't get carried away by these claims of magical food, superfoods. You still have to put that food in the right perspective in your matrix, which is only true to you. It cannot be a blanket statement. So I think take it with a pinch of salt.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madan. I'm very different perspective, and rightly said. I think we should just cut off this part of the video and promote it in the YouTube, so whoever goes through this video can understand that everything is to be done in the proportion. And again, the right focus should be on the creating awareness of the right products, the right medium, so that every section of society, however they are reaching out to the media options, I mean, can able to see that or understand the message. So right messaging to the right target audience is very much important and very critical. Thank you so much. I think we are any other view from the panel members, or should we just proceed toward the closing the session?
I think there is just one question which I see, I think, as a part of the panel, which is from Aruna, I think, which probably she wants to know something about Ayurveda in boosting immunity, and what is the approximate minimum quantity of spices like cinnamon, ginger that we should take daily. And are there any clinical studies about the effect of spices on our immunity so that we can claim its benefit? I think I'll just give a very short answer for this one, is that, yes, there are values available, like I said, but before we actually jump onto those entire values, I'll just take example of ginger per se. Like I said, first we have to be very sure that what is the source of your information that you want to take, what is going to be the product. So if you want to take it from more Ayurvedic proprietary medicine perspective, you have to refer to the Charak Samhita or the Pharmacopoeia India. The values are given, the format is given in everything like that. If you want to put it as a part of an FSSAI, like an FSDU or those kind of a product as a nutraceutical or as a functional bioactive, as an extracted bioactive compound that needs to be put in, we need to incorporate the actual clinical studies. Yes, at least for ginger, some of them are available, but I'm not sure for all of them they would be available to the extent that are required for us to make a very strong claim. So hence, we have to do a very independent, proper analysis of, like I said, the compound, the format, the product, and the regulatory classification for that. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Bhavna. I think we are very timely placed at the moment, and let me just close it out. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for the today discussion. I mean, it's really tricky. Would like to put hardly vote of thanks to our eminent speakers for acceding to our request and sharing their immense knowledge with the participants. I think today's session was very insightful and very focused on the today's perspective. And we moved on to various aspects of the nutrition. And I think partner must be very happy to get such kind of learning and knowledge from immense speakers. I believe the webinars would not have been successful without the participants. I would like to thank our distinguished delegates from development partners, from the government, and other stakeholders from the industry for being with us and paying their valuable attention, and for at least asking some questions to our panel members who were available today with us. Vicky would always keep on maintaining this momentum for creating awareness about safe and nutritious food. Thank you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. And with this, we wind up the session. And once again, thanks to all the panel members for joining
Thank you.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.